Hey everyone, welcome to Talks of Thailand. My name is John, and today's story is about a guy who found out some uncomfortable truths while living in Thailand. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and give me your feedback on the first portion of today's story. There is a community post about this, and also there will be a pinned comment as well. So, let's get into it.
I can remember it like it was yesterday. Not the first meeting with her, but this was about the 5th time I was back in her bar, having the time of my life with this girl that I felt a real connection to. I should point out also that I was going back to her bar against my better judgment on multiple occasions, but no matter how hard I tried to convince myself to not go, I just couldn't help it, feeling like I needed to explore where things would go with her. It started like any other time in the bar with her. I'm ordering drinks for myself, ordering drinks for her, and while at this point I'd spent quite a lot of time with her, and it also felt like we were starting to get to know each other, she started trying to push me to buy drinks for some of the other girls in the bar as well. I never understood girls that did this, and it appeared that these girls already had drinks, and had them a few minutes before she asked me. Of course I declined, because I wasn't there to buy random drinks for random girls that I wasn't speaking to. It was okay buying the girl I wanted to be with drinks, but definitely no one else. I noticed a slight change in her behaviour when I said no, but it wasn't enough to force her away from me, and she was still smiling and talking to me like she had every other time I'd seen her before. As usual, when I was with her, the plan was to leave and go get something to eat, and then we would see where things went from there. I felt like I'd had enough drinks. She seemed like she was ready to leave as well, so I asked for the bill. When the bill came, it was obvious that they'd overcharged me considerably. Not just a little bit of an overcharge either. The bill was at least 3,000 baht more than it should have been, and of course, I asked them what was going on. Every time they give you a drink, they put their little bill into the container in front of you, and when I ordered drinks for me and for her, the bill was put there like every other time, so I didn't notice any additions. When it came time to pay, and they gave me the inflated bill, they showed me all the bills, and it became quite clear that they'd put lots of different drinks on for girls that I didn't agree to buy. I was very angry about the situations. Things like that had happened to me before, something known as bill padding in Thailand. Yet the time that this happened felt like it was a betrayal because I was with this girl and I'd already spent quite a lot of time with her, and I thought we were getting to know each other. I was hurt, but after complaining they did remove the drinks, and we went about the night the same way as we would otherwise have done. Why I'm saying this? Because for some reason I didn't see that as a huge warning sign to be taken care of. I continued the relationship with this bar girl all the way to nearly getting married. And what happened next though was even worse than that. And if I look back at that one event, I really only have a bit of myself to blame. Notice how I only will say a bit because I don't really think I'm to blame, but I'm looking for things that I should have known about before doing what I did. I think my reason for being in Thailand is quite different to many of the stories that I've heard before. This was back in 2015, and I was sitting at my job back at home during a lunch break, and I was browsing job postings in my field. I'm a software engineer by trade, and I noticed a job advertisement for somebody that basically did what I did for a BOI company in Thailand. If anyone is unfamiliar with the term BOI, it stands for Board of Investment, and the rules behind working for a company like that are different than they are for a normal company in Thailand. There isn't the same Thai staff to foreigner quotas that need to be met, and the companies that fall under this are able to employ professionals from different countries easier than normal companies can. This company seemed to be quite new, and I was interested in what their vision was, what it said on their website anyway, and before the end of the lunch break I quickly sent off my resume and a quick cover letter thinking it would be fun to imagine working somewhere like Thailand. I was paid well for what I did. I didn't really have any problems with where I lived, but I didn't have any connections to where I was living. Maybe I was bored and lonely, I don't know, but something about the idea of working overseas did start to interest me. After I sent my resume, I just got back to work as normal, but when I woke up in the morning and noticed that there was an email inviting me for an interview over video, That was already so much more than I expected after sending in that application. What happened next was a series of interviews and me being offered a job at the company's office in Bangkok. I want to dispel the myth straight away that foreigners can't get jobs in Thailand. They can, although generally only doing something where it's hard to find people qualified enough in Thailand to do. I was offered the position, and it was going to be paid a salary of around $6,000 a month, and they would pay for my relocation to Thailand. While the salary was slightly less than I was being paid at the time, I thought the opportunity was too good to miss, so I went for it. And 6 weeks later, I was boarding a plane to Thailand, about to start a very different chapter of my life. When I got off the plane at Suvarnabhumi Airport, I remember the feeling of walking through the jet bridge thinking how surreal it felt. I was actually in Thailand. I was actually doing something that only a few months ago would have only been a dream. I'd never been to Asia before, so I didn't know what to expect. The furthest I got was Europe, and I still had visions about Asia being a dangerous place. When I got through immigration and collected my bags, there was this really pretty Thai girl from the company that had hired me, holding up a sign with my name on it. I was expecting this, but actually seeing it felt so odd given that I wasn't used to that sort of treatment. She helped me get to the hotel that the company was paying for, and during the drive, I was just staring out of the window as Bangkok was flying past. It struck me that everything was in English as well as Thai in terms of the road signs, which I wasn't expecting, given I used to enjoy doing research about Japan, which for some reason I expected Thailand to be like. I arrived on a Friday morning, which was good, because it meant that I had the whole weekend to take as much of Bangkok in as possible before starting work, and I needed time to adjust to just how different things were there. Truthfully, I was always lonely back at home. I didn't really have many friends, and I just spent my weekends watching football or playing video games. I'd heard about the bars in Bangkok. Everyone who'd been to Thailand seemed to go on about them, and they said you had to go and see what they were like, even if you don't take anything further. That first Friday, I walked from my hotel to where I'd heard the bars were located, and the first place I went to was called Nana Plaza, and it most definitely was nothing like I'd ever seen before. I loved the bars straight away. I was drawn to the energy and the chaos, and also the fact that people actually wanted to talk to you, which was nothing like the pubs back at home where everyone just seemed to stick to their own group. I wasn't an old guy either. I was only 29 and still felt young enough to be able to enjoy myself with girls in my own age bracket, and that made a big difference. I went back to the bars on Saturday night and also Sunday night as well. I went to Soy Cowboy, which was a bit different to Nana, but it still had the same idea about it, and by Sunday night I was thinking this really was as good as I expected it to be and better. It was a complete U-turn from my boring life back at home. I was really invigorated when I went into the office on Monday morning. It was only a short walk away from the Shit Lom BTS station, and it was very close to the Central World Mall. The office was really high up on the 25th floor of a modern building, and when I walked in, I was quite impressed as it was nothing like offices I'd worked at before. I was given a seat right next to the window, which was the perfect location for me, as looking at that view alone filled me with an immense amount of motivation. There were about 50 people altogether working there, a mix of Thais and also other foreigners, and the whole environment was nothing like I expected. It was much better. I met my manager, who was from America, and he told me he'd been in Thailand for around 10 years. He showed me around the office and introduced me to the rest of the team, and the company was growing fast and everyone there seemed to be excited about being part of something brand new and different. The Thai staff all spoke English extremely well and always seemed to be smiling and asking if I needed help with one thing or another. Even on that first day, I felt like I'd made the right choice taking the job. It was like this was just what I needed at that stage of my life. The first few days passed by and I used those mostly to get up to speed, understand the systems they were using, and also try to figure out how things were done there. I was really good at my job, I always had been, and I could see straight away that there were room for improvements and I could make those work. Already, by the end of the first week, I'd fixed a few minor issues that had been bothering the team for a few months, and my manager was really impressed. I can remember walking out of the office that first Friday evening and taking the BTS back towards Nana, where my hotel was located, and I was feeling really upbeat about my future in Thailand. It didn't seem like I was just another employee. I could see that they valued what I was able to bring to the table, and things were great. I was being paid a good salary, the work was interesting, and Bangkok was an amazing city that I was only just starting to discover. I went back to the bars again that Friday night to celebrate my first week at my new job, and that's when I started to become a regular at a few places I liked the most. Before long, the girls started remembering me from the previous weekend, and I liked that feeling of being recognised, as if it really did make me feel like I belonged there. When I was back home, I could go to the same pub all the time, and nobody would even remember. In Thailand, after just a little bit of time there, the girls were waving me over, and that made Thailand even better. I spent my second weekend in Bangkok looking for a condo to rent, as the company was only paying for my hotel for the first 2 weeks. I wanted somewhere as close as possible to a BTS station so I could get to work easily, and after looking at a few different options, I chose a really nice one-bedroom condo in a place called Thong Lo. The rent was 20,000 baht per month, which to me seemed like great value for what and where it was. The building was very modern, and it had a decent pool and a gym, and the best part was it was only a 5-minute walk to the BTS station. I found out straight away that I could save a big portion of my salary because I was finding things so much cheaper compared to back home. I was earning a salary of $6,000 a month, which was the equivalent of about 200,000 baht at the exchange rate at the time, so even after my rent and other living expenses, I expected to be able to save over half of it. I moved into that condo on the very Sunday, and immediately went exploring around the area. Right next to the BTS station in Thong Lo, there was an open-air Thai restaurant. It was just a local place with those blue tables and chairs at the front. And my first time there, I had pak kapow pork with rice and a beer chang, and everything only cost me just over $5. The food was really good, and I found it so much better than any of the Thai food that I'd had back at home. The place would be somewhere I would eat at often, sometimes days in a row after I'd finished work, and it didn't take me long to get into life in Bangkok. Work hard during the day, a great dinner at restaurant at night or somewhere similar, and then I'd usually have a beer or two at one of the bars. I definitely wasn't going crazy or anything like that. I was just enjoying my new life. The condo where I lived was nice too. It was fully furnished with a big bed, but the kitchen facilities weren't great, but I never needed to cook anyway. I remember giving my mum a call that weekend and telling her how things were going and how well they were going, and while she seemed to be a bit worried about me being so far from home, she could tell I was loving it and there was really nothing to worry about. I'd never felt more independent or more alive than I did during those first weeks in Bangkok. The way everything was so new and exciting, from the food to the people, but mainly just how different the way of life was. And I was saving money as well, which I struggled to do before. And I was enjoying my job, loving Bangkok, and I really felt like I didn't want for anything. I felt like I was settling into work really well, and I was definitely very good at the job I was doing. My first tasks were just fixing problems that had been around for a long time, and after that, it was then implementing brand new systems that should have the effect of making things run a lot smoother. I will admit, though, that I wasn't feeling a huge connection to my work colleagues, who always seemed to be going out together after work. It wasn't like they didn't invite me. They did invite me along, but they always wanted to go to those trendy rooftop bars or really expensive restaurants that just didn't sit right with me, and it just wasn't my scene. I went with them sometimes, and one time I remember going to a very expensive place in Phrom Phong. It was one of those Japanese restaurants where a meal costs a lot more than most Thai people seem to earn for working a whole week. I struggled to enjoy places like that, where a beer cost 300 baht plus service and VAT. I felt so out of place. Because everyone in the office was paid very well, they were always talking about the weekend trips that they took to the islands, or how they went to some trendy event somewhere in Bangkok, and I was never able to contribute anything because it just wasn't who I was. Part of me felt like that because the company paid great wages, a lot better than most local companies would, the Thai people working there felt like they were a cut above people who worked at the other places. I'm not saying anything bad about them though, that's just how I felt. I will readily admit to being a lot more drawn to the bars where the girls worked because I liked the experience of being able to talk to them. I found that they were a lot more down to earth, a lot more real somehow, and even though I knew that they were working and that was their job, it didn't feel forced or fake. I'm not saying my colleagues were not nice, they were, but it seemed like they had their own interests and all their interests seemed to align. So after a first few nights going out with them, I started to decline their offers. I didn't really care though. I was enjoying myself so much and that was what mattered. I'd much rather spend an evening in a bar by myself chatting to a girl, even if I had to buy drinks for her, than I was to be sitting in some overly expensive, flashy, out-of-place bar at a restaurant trying to pretend that I was some kind of big shot. Those sanitized places, it was like they were meant for places like London and New York, as if it wasn't an actual authentic Thailand experience. And Thailand, to me, it wasn't that. It was everything other than that. At the end of the day, I was there to do a job, not to join a social club. And because I was doing the job well, that was all that mattered. After I'd been at the job for only around a month, I could tell that I was already becoming a very valued member of the team, and I was already implementing new systems and suggesting improvements, and they were actually getting implemented. I must have been doing a very good job because I was called into my manager's office, that American guy, and to start with I thought I must have done something wrong. But as soon as I walked in, I could tell that nothing was wrong. He was full of smiles and told me how impressed he was with the work I was doing. And just like that, he offered me the lead role with extra responsibilities. I would be responsible for making sure the rest of the development team worked under me. And I was very excited about that because my salary went up to $8,000 a month. That was around 260,000 baht at the time, and that was more money than I'd ever earned before. Making that extra money was great, but it was also the recognition of it, because back at home when I was doing my old job, I'd been there for 3 years and I never felt like I got any kind of recognition or anything other than my standard salary. I felt like this company valued me and the rest of the team. And the fact that that happened just 1 month after joining, that's exactly how you're meant to treat your staff if you want to get the best out of them. I honestly believe that's the best way to do things, because now I felt like I wanted to give 110% all the time. And that was something that I never did at my old job. The team that were there to work under me. They were a mix of Thai and foreign developers. They were all good at their jobs, but they needed someone to coordinate and guide the projects along successfully. I was very good at that, and I always had been. I could see the big picture, and I was able to break it down into more manageable tasks and spread them out accordingly. Making that extra money as well meant that I could save even more. And then I could start actually thinking about the future and what I would be able to do at a certain point when I'd saved up a certain amount, maybe even buying a place or investing in something else. When I spoke to my mum that night and told her the good news, she was finally starting to think that moving to Thailand was a good idea, and it was working out really well for me. Earning great money at 29, living in a really exciting city, and I felt like my career was taking off. In a way, it felt like I was finally becoming the person that I was always meant to be. I wasn't just another small cog in the machine, but I was someone who was able to make a difference to the company that I worked for. That Friday after work, I definitely deserved a huge celebration. Not just going for a few beers at one of my usual places, but a huge and fantastic night out. It only seemed fitting that I went to Soy Cowboy to celebrate after work on that Friday. But I didn't want to go into any of the big bars. I just wanted to go into one of the smaller ones down the street. It was a lot more quiet, a lot more relaxed, and I actually just took a seat on a couch area in the corner. It was still quite early on, so the bar was empty, except for a few of the girls that were working there. And the one that stood out was behind the bar, and she caught my eye almost immediately. I always preferred the girls that looked more natural as opposed to the girls that seemed to use heavy makeup. But I wasn't planning on speaking to any girls as of yet, which is why I took a seat on the couch, away from everyone. But she called me over and cheekily asked for a drink, and I just walked over to the bar. I wasn't feeling it though in terms of buying her a drink straight away because I was just getting ready for the night. But I did say to her, let's flip it for a joke, thinking she'd probably back down. But she actually took me up on the offer straight away and pulled out a 10-baht coin and told me to choose heads or tails, so I chose tails, and it was tails, and she was just about to open me a brand new beer chang on her. Before she had a chance to do that, I actually felt really bad and said, don't worry about it, I'll buy it and I'll buy one for you as well. That's how it all started, tossing a coin over who buys who a drink, even though she was working there and it was my job to buy one for her. I'd only planned to spend under an hour in that bar, but I think I was there for a total of 6 hours just talking to her. I found out that she was from a place called Samut Prakan, and I told her I was working in Bangkok, and the first thing she said was, teacher? And I just said, definitely not. We left the bar together, going back to my place in a taxi because the BTS had already closed for the night, and it felt like a really great experience, and I remember waking up the following morning and she was next to me. And it really did feel like it wasn't just your typical meeting a girl in a bar sort of thing. I felt great that morning, and she got ready and left, and she didn't want anything from me. But she did say come back and see me again. I tried, but she just said don't worry about it. And she left with a really sweet smile, and I will admit to being very puzzled, but also extremely happy. Then I had the worst shock of my life when I found out that the previous night I hadn't exactly played things as safely as you should. I was always usually extremely careful about that sort of thing, but now I was worried beyond belief. My mind was racing through every single one of all the worst things that might have happened, but I also really liked her, more than any other girl I'd met in Thailand, or back home for that matter. It was a very weird feeling, insane panic and dread, yet also, I like this girl. As if something just clicked and you can't describe why you have these feelings. I shifted between happiness and worry, wondering if I'd caught anything, and while the rational, more logical part of my brain was telling me that the odds were incredibly low, everything should be okay, there's always that niggling worry that something dreadful could have happened. It would be months before I would know anything, so I did feel like I was stuck in some kind of limbo of not knowing what was actually going on. But, like I said, I go back to thinking about her again and then I don't worry as much. It was weird. I know I was an idiot for doing that, I will admit to that, but the only thing that made me feel better was the thought of seeing her again. And by that Saturday, I decided that I would go back to her bar that night because I wanted to see her and see if it felt just as good as it did when I saw her the day before. Or had I just imagined the whole thing? I will say that later I found out that there were no issues at all. I'd been lucky. But I think it was that worry that I had that sort of forced me back to her, even though I did like her. But would I have gone back if I wasn't worried? I still don't really know how to answer that question. I went back to her bar on the Saturday, and as soon as I saw her, all my fears completely died down. I felt like I didn't need to worry and that I would probably be okay and should just enjoy myself. She also seemed quite happy to see me again, and she actually gave me a hug when I walked in, and we seemed to just pick up right from where we left the night before. From then on, I started going to see her often. Sometimes I would go every night in a row after work, and it started to become a regular thing. It was enough so that the other girls there knew me and knew exactly what and who I was there for. We'd just sit together and drink and talk about things, and we were getting to know each other in a really good way. It really felt like we were getting to know each other. I liked her and she liked me, and it was about the whole picture, not just the typical sort of things that people do when they go to places like that. That took us to the following weekend, which was the night that I mentioned right at the start of my story, when the bar tried to overcharge me around 3,000 baht, adding to the bill lots of drinks that I hadn't ordered for myself or for her. Like I said, I guess it was about the 5th time I'd been back to her bar, and I really did think that we had something special going on. When I saw all those extra drinks added to my bill, these were drinks for girls that I'd never talked to. I was actually more hurt than I was angry. She just sat there looking very uncomfortable when I argued with the mama-san about the inflated bill, and they did remove the drinks that I didn't agree to pay for after I complained, but it felt sort of like the damage had already been done. I did think to myself, if she would allow them to do that to me, I should probably just walk away and forget about the whole thing. Maybe she was even in on it and was going to take a cut, And it was a massive red flag, and I would have been an idiot if I completely ignored it. She could see I was upset about it, and she actually apologised, saying that she didn't know that they were going to do that, but I think she did. And she did seem to be actually upset about it in a way that didn't seem fake. So I did decide to completely forget about it because I really did like her. I'm telling you the truth. I really liked her. And I think it's important because I was also still waiting to be able to make sure that I hadn't caught anything unpleasant. It was still a while before knowing, and somehow when I was with her I felt less worried about it. I get that doesn't make any sense to anyone, probably, but nothing really about that relationship I was building with her made any sense if you actually think about it. But it didn't matter, because being happy seemed to be the only thing that mattered to me. I probably saw her at least 5 times a week during the next 3 months, and when I finally did get my test results back and found out everything was okay, I was extremely relieved but also very happy. With that worry completely out of the way, I felt like I needed to take things a lot further with her and try to make the whole thing more official somehow. We'd known each other for 3 months, spent so much time together, I felt like the next step was to ask her to move in with me, and I was actually quite nervous about asking, dreading that she'd say no. Quite ridiculous to be nervous in a situation like that, when your relationship started in a bar, but you can't help how you feel. Before I had much chance to worry about her saying no, she'd already said yes. She actually seemed to be very happy about it, and that made me very happy too. One thing that I hadn't done with her was share anything about my financial position. While I didn't have a lot of money, I was earning a good salary, and I didn't want her to be with me for money. I did tell her that I was earning not much money. I said I was earning in the region of about 60,000 baht every month, which was decent in comparison to many people in Thailand, but not really amazing by expat standards. I thought that if she actually wanted to be with me, thinking that I was making that and it was okay to survive, that would indicate that it was real. I helped her move her things out of the bar because she lived above the bar, but she didn't have many things, just a few bags with clothes and other personal items, and I can remember the first night that she was actually living there with me. I think that was the first time that I actually used the kitchen for months because we cooked dinner together and finished by watching a film on my computer, and everything it just felt so great. After she'd quit the bar, I was giving her 15,000 baht a month to cover her own expenses, and she did seem happy with it. I wasn't earning 60,000 baht, I was actually earning 260,000 baht at this point, but I really felt like she didn't need to know about that at least yet. My plan was after we'd been together for quite a while, maybe even after getting married if it got that far, then I'd be able to tell her the truth about my salary and we could have a better life together. I thought by doing that I was being clever and making sure that she was with me for the right reasons, and she seemed happy with our life, going to more local restaurants, enjoying time at home, and spending quality time together at the weekends. I was definitely a lot happier than I'd ever been before, and I'd just come home from work and she was there and it made work even better than it already was. Is it too cliché to say that my life felt complete? If it is, I'm going to say it anyway because it did feel complete. I'd been working really hard ever since I arrived in Thailand, and I hadn't actually taken any time off work at all, and I did have some available allowance. I decided to have a week together with her and go to Koh Samui. I booked us into a really nice hotel quite close to Chawang Beach, telling her that I got a small bonus from work and I wanted to treat her and have a nice time. We flew down on Bangkok Airways, and that was the first time I found out that she'd never been on a plane before, and the look on her face when we took off was one I still remember. I had a really great time with her on Koh Samui. All the fresh seafood that you could buy. There's some really great restaurants along the beach. You can go for a swim in the sea or the hotel pool, and in the evenings it was just nice to walk along the beach, stopping off at different beach bars on the way for a few drinks. We were definitely getting a lot closer to each other every single day, and I was so happy, and she seemed to be happy too because she was always smiling and holding my hand. It was like it was a proper thing. One of those days we went to Lamai Beach, and I found it to be nicer and even quieter than Chaweng. And while she didn't like to spend time during the day in the sun, sitting on the beach in the evening was better for me anyway. I started talking about staying in Thailand long term, maybe even buying a place to live. And while I must stress that I never did buy a place in Thailand, When we were talking about it, she said it was a really good idea and something she'd like as well. On our last night there, we went to a really great little restaurant, and at this point, I'm actually thinking to myself that I should think about spending the rest of my life with her because I can't picture anyone else being as good. She most definitely wasn't anything like the girls back at home, who always seemed to want more, and who always wanted more, and seemed dissatisfied with everything, like they'd somehow become something other than a girl. When we arrived back in Bangkok at the weekend, before I was due to start work, it was just a normal life. It felt like we'd moved to the next level completely. We really were a proper couple, and we were actually planning the future. I was doing good at my job, I had a great girlfriend, and I was living in an amazing place. And it did really feel like nothing could go wrong. The next few months went by and I was still happy with her, and I'm really happy with my job, and there was nothing to say that life wasn't coming together very well. I guess I'd probably been in Thailand for about 8 months or so, and I will say it again, but everything was going so much better than I could have imagined when I first applied for the job during my lunch break. My work was going so well. The systems that I'd managed to implement were already saving the company a lot of time and money, and the team that was working with me seemed to respect me for doing the job I was doing. When I was at home, my girlfriend was always exactly like I would have wanted her to be, and when we met, she already spoke quite good English, but she was actually putting in more effort to try to improve her English some more. While I was picking up bits and pieces of Thai, it was something I struggled with. We'd always be going to that restaurant close to the BTS station in Tong Lo, but one thing that was fun was going to try and find different places, new and exciting places that we could add to the list of favourites. I started to feel like even this job ended, I wanted to remain in Thailand forever. I wasn't expecting the job to come to an end anytime soon, because the company was growing, they were getting more clients, and my position was secure. But even still, I was thinking 5 or 10 years in the future. I'd already managed to save up just over 1,000,000 baht, which was more money than I'd ever had all in one place before. And then I was thinking in a year's time, I might have enough to buy myself a condo, just like the one I was living in. That started to feel like a very exciting possibility. I even started thinking about well into the future, maybe even having children with her in a normal family. This family and this life was meant to be in Thailand, most definitely not back where I was from. My girlfriend seemed to want the same things that I did. She'd always talk about wanting her own place in the future and kids. And what I'm trying to paint a picture of is a guy who moved to Thailand, whose life was so much better than it was ever before, with an amazing girlfriend that he could only have ever dreamt of before, making great money and saving even better money. The future really did seem like it was only a matter of time before everything I ever wanted was actually with me. I was really excited about going to the company's first New Year's party. It was a few days before actual New Year, and the company was closing for a few days. It was meant to be a celebration of all the good work that had been done throughout the year, and everyone seemed to be very in high spirits. The party was at a hotel on Sukhumvit, and there was an open bar, great buffet, and everything was laid on really nicely. I took my girlfriend along as well, and I didn't think anything about it because I was told that other people were going to be taking their partners as well. She dressed up really nicely, and I felt proud walking in there with her. The party was going well, everyone was drinking and chatting, and my girlfriend was even mingling with some of the other partners, and she seemed to be fitting right in. At one point, I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, I saw her standing at the bar talking to my boss. I didn't have any reason to think anything negative about it, because my boss was a very friendly guy and he was talking to everyone when it was their turn. They were just chatting. She was laughing at something he said, and when I walked over, he quickly changed the subject onto work things. The rest of the night went well. There were some speeches about how well the company had been doing, and I just hoped my girlfriend wouldn't question my salary. She seemed to have really enjoyed herself, and she said that she liked meeting the people that I worked with and how they all seemed very nice. I remember feeling really good about how the whole night had gone, and it felt like she'd passed some sort of test and she was able to fit in with my work side of life. We got a taxi back home quite late that night, and both of us were admittedly a bit drunk, and she was being affectionate and sweet as always, telling me that I looked really handsome in my shirt. I went to bed that night thinking that everything was going really well, that I had a perfect girlfriend who could be part of both sides of my life, the work side and the personal side. The company, it was closing down for 5 days over New Year, and I'd already booked tickets to Phuket so we could go and celebrate properly. We flew to Phuket for New Year and we stayed in a really nice hotel quite close to Patong. If I had to compare it to Koh Samui, I would say I preferred Koh Samui. But it was still nice to go to Phuket because many people seemed to go there as their go-to beach destination in Thailand. On New Year's Eve, we made our way down to Patong Beach. There was a big celebration. Thousands of people everywhere, fireworks, a show, and everything was going on. It was a very special experience, and they seemed to put on a good show. I can remember standing with her about midnight, and some people had already let off lanterns into the sky. And that was the moment that I'd been waiting for quite a long time. I had been planning it and thinking about it for at least a month. And we'd been to look at rings in Bangkok, but I actually hadn't bought one yet. When I was standing on the beach with her, she was looking very happy. I just decided to come out with it there and then. I asked her to marry me, telling her I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I didn't have a ring, as I said, and I didn't do it the traditional way. I just asked her. She looked pretty shocked at first, and then she actually just said yes, she'd love to marry me. That was a great night. The new year had come in, and everything seemed exciting moving forwards, and we celebrated for hours. I promised her that I would let her pick out a ring once we got to Bangkok, and the following morning, while we were both nursing a hangover, she called her mother, saying she was getting married. She just wanted a traditional Thai-style wedding with the family, close friends, and other locals, and I agreed with everything that she wanted because I wanted to make it a very memorable experience for her. We returned to Bangkok, and the following weekend, we went to see her family in Samut Prakan for the first time. We discussed the wedding, and they all seemed to be very friendly people, so that was a good thing. And after that, we returned to Bangkok again. I really couldn't believe that I was so happy. I was busy at work every single day, doing what needed to be done and managing the team. And also, we started working on a really big new project, and if that went well, could have seen me getting another big raise. And that was really exciting to think about. We always had good times together in the evenings, and we had a New Year's resolution that we would start going to the gym together and try to spend a bit more time at home cooking healthier meals and just trying to build a proper life. I thought I was happy before, but after I got engaged, it seemed to take things to another level altogether, and I felt like my life was just moving along exactly like I would have wanted it to have done. My life would never have been this good if I hadn't gone to Thailand. We went and I let her choose out a ring, and that was 80,000 baht. It was a little bit more than I wanted to spend, but it seemed worth it, just to see how happy she was when I gave it to her. I needed to sort out some documentation in order to get married, which involved going to the embassy, getting translations done, but it wasn't that difficult, and I employed the help of an agent to do most of the things that I didn't need to do myself. While I was working, she was speaking to her mother, trying to organise the wedding. At least that's what I thought she was doing. And I was just going along with everything in the heat of the moment, thinking that there was no chance that anything could ever go wrong. Thailand had given me so much. I really felt like I owed Thailand a huge debt of gratitude. The thought of 5 years passing and getting to the point where I'm going to be married, getting to the point where I had my own place, more money saved up, and lots of other amazing things, it was exciting to think about. I was at work a few days later, and my boss invited me out for lunch. This wasn't unusual, as we'd usually go maybe once a week to talk about work and projects that were currently underway. But this time was very, very different. I could tell from the moment we sat down that something was wrong. He seemed to be very uncomfortable. He kept fidgeting with his menu and not making the usual jokes that he liked to make. Then he made me promise that I wouldn't tell anyone what he was about to tell me, as it could make him appear in a very bad light. But he said he was doing it for me because he respected me and thought I deserved to know the truth. I panicked because I thought he was going to fire me or the company was going under or something else along those lines. But it was actually far worse than that. He went on to talk about the New Year's party a few weeks ago and how he'd recognised my girlfriend from a website where she was listed as an escort. He said he wasn't judging her or me. That's actually one of the reasons he came to Thailand himself, he said, because he really liked that kind of lifestyle and it was all he did. But he was sure it was her. When he'd spoken to her at the party, he tried to test her, mentioning the website in a roundabout way, and she'd worriedly told him not to tell me while appearing to be laughing at his jokes. She told him something about her need to make money, and she did it sometimes, just like she used to do in the bar before we met. And now, my boss knows I met my fiancée in a bar on Soy Cowboy. He said she'd begged him not to say anything because she loved me, but she needed the extra money for what I don't know. My boss took out his phone and showed me the actual proof. There were screenshots from the website, and it was definitely undeniable. There she was, my fiancée, with photos that were actually taken probably while I was at work. The profile graphically described everything that left nothing to the imagination, and I felt like I was going to be sick right there in the restaurant. My boss said that he was really sorry and he'd struggled with whether to tell me or not, but he thought I should know before I got married to her. He said I was a good guy, apparently too good for this, and I deserved a lot better. He told me to take the rest of the week off, full paid leave, and to sort my head out and figure out what to do. He said he knew it was difficult, but it's better to find out now rather than later. I couldn't even speak. I just nodded and left the restaurant. After I left the restaurant, I just walked around Bangkok for hours, not knowing what to do. My head was going around in circles, and I kept replaying the conversation that I'd just had with my boss. I was so sad that she was doing that, so blatantly behind my back, going to meet other guys while I was at work, and she'd been lying to me every day. The thing that hurt the most was that I hadn't told her I earned a good salary because I was going to tell her after we got married. I wanted to surprise her with the fact I was earning $260,000 a month, not $60,000 like she thought. At this point, I was giving her 15,000 baht a month, which I thought was more than enough for her because I covered the costs for everything anyway. But apparently, it wasn't enough for her. I had no idea what else she needed to spend money for. I'd planned to tell her the truth about how much I earned after the wedding. I thought that would be the best thing to do. But all of a sudden, she'd be able to find out that we could have a better life than we already thought. We could have good things together and that she would respect me more. I thought she was getting married to me for the right reasons. Because of that, I thought she loved me, and it wasn't about the money. I'm quite shy to say that part of me wanted to just completely forget about it, pretend that I didn't know anything and get married to her anyway and hope things would change. But I knew that was a really stupid thing to do because if she was doing it now, it was more the fact of she thought it was acceptable more than anything else. Even if she stopped, the fact that she happily did that, it was too much. The biggest part of me was very angry. I felt like I wanted to confront her, even scream at her and ask her how she could even do it. I'd started to build my whole life around her and Thailand and this job. We'd started planning our future together and what it was going to be like, and now it felt like it was all falling apart around me. I had no idea what to do, so I walked all the way to Lumpini Park and just sat there thinking about things. A few hours later, I called my boss and thanked him for telling me the truth. I knew it probably couldn't have been easy for him. He did say if there was anything he could do, just let him know and he'd do his best to help. And he did say he'd been through something similar, so that's why he was in Thailand, because he didn't want anyone to hold anything over him. And I guess it was fortunate that he was the sort of guy who liked to use websites like that all the time, because if he didn't, I probably would never have known. After sitting in Lumpini Park for what felt like 3 hours, completely devastated about what I found out, I made my way back to the closest BTS station and took that to Tong Lo and back to the condo. I was dreading walking through the front door, having to speak with her about what I'd found out. As soon as I walked in, she saw my face. She knew something was wrong. And when I told her what I found out, what she'd been doing, I could tell she knew there was no point trying to deny it. She was in shock that I'd found out, and even up until then, I still had some hope that it was someone else, not her. But it was her. The first thing she said was that she was sorry and she planned to stop after we got married, going on to talk about how she needed to make more money to help her family. I just told her that's what they all say. She said that 15,000 I was giving her wasn't enough, but she wasn't able to explain where the money went or what she needed it for. She just said it wasn't enough. I asked her to detail all her expenses, but she refused. If it wasn't enough according to her, it wasn't enough and there was nothing I could do about it. She was quite tense and a little bit angry when we were talking, and then I dropped it on her, saying, "Do you know that I actually make 260,000 as a salary, not 60,000 like I told you? I did that because I wanted you to be with me for the right reasons. I wanted you to be with me for love, not money." I expected her to be very sad when she heard that, But she was actually really furious, screaming at me in Thai and English, saying that I lied to her, making her think that we were poor and we could be living a lot better. She then said if I told her the truth all along, she wouldn't have needed to do what she did. I actually found out that she was doing that while she was working in the bar as well, but I didn't know. That actually made the whole thing worse because it did seem there and then that she was only with me for money after all. She was furious, thinking that I should have told her how much I earned straight away because that would have been different for her. I bet it would have been different for her, but that wouldn't have given me any sense of security or any way or reason to find out what I'd found out about her, which was very difficult to come to terms with, but I found out before things went too far. She just kept blaming me for not giving her enough money, but I wasn't buying that. I was giving her more money than a large portion of the population of the country earned for working a whole month, and they have expenses on top of it to pay, so I didn't buy it. And then, after we'd gone around in circles for at least 2 hours, she stormed out, shouting that I was stupid and I didn't understand the country. I didn't understand anything, apparently. And she slammed the door, and there I was alone in the condo. It really did feel like everything was closing in on me, and I didn't know what to do. After she left, I struggled on with work over the next month, but I was starting to feel like I really needed to leave Thailand altogether. She arrived back at the condo a few evenings saying she was sorry and she wouldn't do it again, but I knew that she was only doing that because she found out that I was earning more money than she thought, and it was too obvious. I was starting to make a few mistakes at work, sometimes very important ones, and it was lucky that they were caught by someone else because if they weren't, it could have cost the company a lot of money. I felt like my heart just wasn't in Bangkok anymore. It wasn't even in Thailand anymore, and I really did feel like my life was completely destroyed by her. Every single day in Bangkok was pure torture. Every time I'd walk past somewhere we went together, I'd remember how happy I was when I was there with her just a few weeks before. Everything reminded me of her, and as much as I tried to get over it, I felt like what she'd done had made me feel like it was a Thailand thing, and if I continued in Thailand, the same thing would just happen to me again. With all that, I handed in my resignation at work, just telling my boss that I was very sorry, but I couldn't do it anymore. I really couldn't stay in Thailand. He told me he understood, said that he'd seen it all before, really good guys getting destroyed by bar girls who thought that they loved them. He told me to think about it and make sure that's what I wanted, but I already knew I did. I just wanted to go back home, back to where none of this had happened. I did give the company a month's notice just so they were able to find someone else to replace me, and so I could help train them up to standard, which I thought was only right. And I didn't want to give the company any difficulties because of what had happened, because it wasn't really their fault. I felt like a total failure during that last month, as if I was just going through the motions on autopilot because I didn't actually want to be there in person. The flight home was the worst of all of it. I just sat there on the plane for the whole time wondering how everything had gone so badly wrong and how she had done that to me. I still didn't know. The company gave me a send-off with a business class ticket, but that didn't really give me any shred of comfort after what had happened. I'd arrived in Thailand full of hope and dreams for what the different life could be like. I was ready to start a new life and start again, and I was looking forward to the next decades of my life. But instead, I was leaving, completely broken and destroyed. I'd saved quite a lot of money by being there, but it meant nothing. The career progress didn't mean anything to me at all because all I could think about was how she had betrayed me the way she did. I felt like I never wanted to see Thailand again after what had happened, because in a way Thailand had given me everything I'd ever wanted, but after it had taken it all away again without any remorse, and I felt like I would never be able to be the same person again. The girl who was supposed to be my wife and eventually the mother of my children had been doing that behind my back the whole time because I didn't give her enough money, and that betrayal still stays with me today.